Once again, a very warm good morning to everybody. A warm welcome on this cloudy Sunday morning. I am in Chennai and it's very cloudy here in Chennai, and to all the panelists of national and international experience. 12th September is celebrated as the International First Aid Day. And to commemorate that, we at GSHP, in collaboration with CAHO is actually the consortium of accredited hospitals organization, and Seeds of Sustainability have organized this event today. With a growing number of healthcare organizations achieving various standards of accreditation like NABH, NABL, JCA, so on and so forth, there was a need for a common platform that would facilitate communication amongst the accredited health organizations. CAHO is a not-for-profit society that was formed to fulfill this basic need. And amongst other objectives, CAHO was formed to promote a nationwide quality movement in healthcare and was aimed at creating awareness amongst consumers and other stakeholders, and undertake research activities and establish benchmarks in the area of healthcare quality, and establish a repository of the best international and national practices. Seeds of Sustainability, with the acronym of SOS, is a platform that brings various stakeholders such as industry, institution, and society together with a goal to foster sustainability. SOS aspires to create awareness and research on various matters that are of paramount significance in achieving sustainability through SDG goals. Sustainability elements like environmental awareness, social awareness, and other matters that help the economic progress. We welcome you to connect with us, your societies, industries, and institutions, to get the nurturing experience provided together with all our collaborators and well-wishers. We plan to communicate to you the events and webinars which will be coming in the days ahead and conducted by us, along with our collaborators and supporters, so that it can reach many people and create the necessary benefits of awareness. I would now invite Mr. Ashok Garlapati, Vice Chairman of GSHP, to give an overview about GSHP and its activities. And before that, I will probably give a brief introduction of Mr. Ashok. One moment. Give me a minute, please.
Sure. It's fine, RPG.
Okay.
If you find difficult, no problem.
Okay. Over to you, Ashokji. Let's commence.
Sure.
Ashokji is the Vice Chairman of GSHP, and he is based out of Kuwait. Over to you, Ashokji. You can start.
Thank you, Ramprasadji. Namaskar to everybody from Kuwait. I'm Ashok Garlapati and Vice Chairman of GSHP. I'm also associated with other professional organizations like ASSP, which is American Society of Safety Professionals, and Board of Certified Safety Professionals. And my chairman, our beloved chairman, Mr. Jeetu Patel, who is attending from Arizona today, maybe it's around 10 p.m. We appreciate his participation today. And our dynamic and charismatic President, Dr. Kamal Soi, is attending from Ludhiana today. And our Senior Vice President, Mr. Madhu Bura, is attending from Vizag. And Mr. Ram Prasad is our Executive Committee Chair for Insurance and Risk Support, attending from Chennai. And the key player of this particular webinar, Seeds of Sustainability, as well as our Executive Committee Chair for Corporate Sustainability and Community Initiatives, Madam Kirti. So we welcome you all for this particular important World First Aid Day. In fact, I'm in the profession from more than 30 years. We have been supporting on the first aid for several decades, I can say, but this is my first ever event commemorating the World First Aid Day. So I would like to appreciate our executive committee and GSHP body for bringing this particular important event, commemoration of the first World First Aid Day. Thank you very much. I also welcome Dr. Saravanan, who is the speaker of the day from CAHO. So we are going to listen from him how important is the First Aid Day. So before that, before I invite our chairman as well as our president to brief you on their inaugural as well as the importance of the first aid, I just want to brief you on the GSHP, what exactly this Global Society of HSE Professionals. As you see on the left on the screen, we have a 30 plus, I think around 35 and people are joining. I just wanted to give a significance of the left side picture. Basically, it is a Taj Mahal to India. These particular towers are similar Kuwait towers to Kuwait. It's a historical importance. And what is the significance between that and this GSHP? There is a huge significance related to this particular three towers which you are seeing there. Myself and Mr. Jeetu Patel, who have been associated with the professional engagement over many, almost 2 decades, and we have been supporting the global fraternity. And we basically from India, as you know, we wanted to give back to India. And we wanted to just see how we can support Indian professionals with respect to HSE. In that aspect, we met our Dr. Kamal Soi on various other occasions in India during the PDCs, but we invited him to Kuwait back in 2019. I think it's in December 2019. We shared this idea, myself and Mr. Jeetu Patel, we shared this idea of supporting the Indian HSE professionals through an exclusive body. So that's why, of course, that discussion happened in these 3 towers. That's why we 3 people have become some sort of a passionate to support the Indian professionals, and we started this GSHP. Of course, afterwards, our journey continued, and of course, it all started in the COVID-19 period, and we registered our society. And today, you see Mr. Madhu Bura and Mr. Ram Prasad and Madam Kirti and many others. Almost today I'm going to brief you how many we have engaged already. And today's event is one such initiative from GSHP to support the community. So with that brief introduction of how we started, I would like to welcome you all from GSHP on behalf of the governing body. I feel privileged to welcome all the participants to brief about the GSHP and how you can engage with the GSHP as we move forward. And as you see on the screen, of course, we have a lengthy mission and vision statements, but I just want to tell you one thing. We are here to make that left side Indian map to the green. What I mean to say that all the red spots are having highest per lakh population, highest road fatalities in India per lakh of the population. The green is one fatality per lakh of the population, and the red is almost 18.2 to 20. It goes like that. You see the many parts of India are still green, still red, and we need to overcome that. And our Dr. Kamal Soi, part of the Ministry of Road and Highways, he played a key role in implementing the recent Motor Vehicle Act also. In fact, he shared a lot of insight into this particular aspect in yesterday's CAHO's exclusive webinar. I'm sure I request Madam Kirti to share that particular link to the participants of this particular webinar also. So that is our mission. We want to make everything safe. That's whole idea of our mission, not only to the road safety, but we want to support the industry, we want to support the community, we want to support the students and everybody whoever is living on this planet. That's our mission. And our vision is to be local, buy local, and go global. And this is the term, this is the magic statement you are listening in Indian media as well as in the global media. Everybody wants to support their local needs by thinking of the global. So that's our mission. That's our vision. So that's a simple things we just wanted to highlight on the mission and vision. And this particular slide talks everything about the GSHP. We are here to support all the community, all the industry, all the institutions with the collecting as well as conferring and consulting and collaborating. With that, we have a governing trustees, where Mr. Jitu Patel, Dr. Kamal Soi, and myself. And governing council, we have almost established a full governing council, and we are in the process of establishing executive committees and zonal committees, and of course, country ambassadors and coordinators. Oh, that's our whole mission and vision object will be achieved through this particular concept of the 4-pillar diagram here. And of course, we need to have a full organization structure to achieve anything. We have a full governance body established. Of course, some of the positions are still available. If any of the participants are really interested to support us, you're welcome to join with us, and we'll be communicating as we progress. And how we achieve our goals, basically, we have the membership base, we have the governance structure. In addition, we are planning to have a MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, with the similar like-minded organizations. 2 weeks back, our Dr. Kamal Soi entered into a MOU with Guru Nanak Dev Engineering College. 2 days back, Madam Kirti facilitated a MOU with the Queen Mary's College. Basically, we wanted to support the student fraternity, and we are also in the process of establishing MOUs with the corporate organizations as well as with the CAHO itself. The CAHO is an excellent organization supporting the hospital community, and we want to share how we can support with respect to HSC through this MOU. So that's one thing. And of course, we are not limiting to the India itself. Our aim is to go global. That's why we named our organization as a Global Society of HSC Professionals. Today, within 3 or 4 months, in fact, yesterday only we completed 4th monthversary. So that's what our Dr. Kamal Soi shared an excellent message to all the governing body members with the target of expanding vertically and horizontally in the 5th month of our activities. So as you see on the screen, GSHP country ambassadors. What I mean to say that they will be our ambassadors in different countries. Today we have the country ambassadors in Sri Lanka, we have in Malaysia, we have in Philippines, we have in Singapore, we have in UAE and Oman, and we are facilitating for the Malaysia. So there are so many means and ways of supporting the communities. That's why we are having GSHP country ambassador program. With that, of course, we need to have a membership in place. Without members, we cannot achieve anything. So we have a membership on the need basis. We have a membership for the student members, associate members, regular members, and the professional members. As I said, we wanted to engage with the corporate community. Even we have the corporate membership also. So that's about our membership structure. We can have a more communication, more interaction as we progress. We are going to share our communication details also. So with that, I just want to share the governing trustees details there, as well as the governing council members details there. And we have the executive committee, which is in the process of complete formation. We have almost 4 executive committee members, but we have 15 in numbers, 15 needed. So I request everybody who is participating today to get in touch with Dr. Kamal Soi, who is in India, myself is in Kuwait, and Dr. Jitu Patel is in US. So we are always available on the round-the-clock basis, in fact. So with this, I just want to conclude my brief overview of GSHP introduction. But today's webinar has got a very important message here. I was listening to the news also that World First Aid Day is very important to raise the community awareness. Just a simple statement from the St. John Ambulance Chief Executive. In situations where first aid could help save a life, we don't have to feel helpless. That's why we have a Good Samaritan law also recently introduced in India. Because learning life-saving skills is so simple. That's why it is concerning that fewer than 1 in 5 of us knows even basic first aid. This has got to change. It has got to change if we are to stop up to 140,000 lives from being needlessly lost each year. This is 1 in 5 is some other countries' figure. If you take Indian figure, I think we are very, very, very less. That Dr. Saravanan is going to brief us on that, how we can educate our community. Today, we are joining with the CAHO and Seeds of Sustainability in presenting you this particular webinar. Of course, Dr. Kamal Soi and Mr. Jitu Patel are going to brief more about the first aid day and the importance of this webinar. Back to Ram Prasad ji.
Thank you very much, Ashokji. It was a very inspiring introduction to be given. And sometimes things become a little slow, therefore my system is open. For the rest of the attendees here, I would like to give a brief introduction on Mr. Ashok Garlapati. As already mentioned, he is the Vice Chairman of GSHP and is based out of Kuwait. He is a health, safety and environment professional, fellow of the ASSP and certified with CSP, QUP, CFIOSH, a chartered fellow of the IOSH UK and a ASSP fellow. He holds a degree in Bachelor of Environmental Engineering with an MBA and comes with more than 32 years of experience in HSC consultancy and HSC management in the oil and gas industries. He is a renowned expert and holds positions and memberships of various professional bodies, including senior positions in the American Society of Safety Professionals, amongst others. It's an honor to have you here, Ashokji, this morning. Dr. Kamal Soy, good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Kamal, where do we start with him and how to introduce him is always a tricky for me in every meeting. He is a member of the National Road and Safety Council, Government of India, Electric Wales, Sustainable Transportation, Road Rail Safety Expert. He holds a doctorate in Transportation Management and in Transit Losses, an advanced postdoctoral studies in Road Rail Safety and Accident Prevention from Belgium, Netherlands, Japan, Israel and Sweden. In the field of last 20 years, he has been associated with various countries in this line of transportation and road safety. He has worked with various government and semi-government, corporate, local bodies as well as international agencies with extensive experience in safety and EV issues. Though on the hand, over 20 years of experience in India and outside the country. It's a very, very great honor to have you here, Dr. Kamal Soy. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ram Prasad ji. It is, privilege for me to be part of this seminar and webinar today. Rather, in fact, once we talk of international, the first aid day, this is directly related to saving lives. This is something very, very close to my mind, body, and soul. In my whole life, from last 20, 30 years, I've been handling various emergencies and various situations where, the lives were at stake. And we could not only save lives, we could save many people falling grass to the death. We brought them back. And, once Kirtiji was telling me about this program, I was a little anxious, worried, as well as thrilled and excited to present my point of view that how and why and in what circumstances the first aid is going to help us in saving lives. Once we were in the process of establishing Global Society of Health, Safety, Environment Professionals, we were about to design our memorandum of understanding and we were drafting it. And once we were drafting it, we thought of saving human beings? No. GSHP is meant to saving all living beings. And while saving living beings, the first aid is at the front and foremost. We cannot save everybody if we are not trained in first aid. Like Ashokji was mentioning, 5 out of 1 person knows only first aid. And that is talking about globally. But in India, maybe one out of 100,000 people knows first aid, maybe even lesser than that. So before starting this, I'd like to welcome my chairman from Arizona, Mr. Dr. Jitu Patel, who's from left, right, and center. He's not sleeping and he's just focusing on saving lives all the time. Even now, I believe that he's all concentrated. And he was on a holiday for a few days, but still he's as engrossed into this as we are. And my vice chairman from Kuwait, who's as passionate as for saving living beings as anybody else can be. He was talking about the story on the Twin Towers of Kuwait. I can really tell you that those Twin Towers, they have made a history in those three towers, I'm sorry, those three towers made a history. You know, one tower was standing in Arizona. That's why I'm saying two towers. So two towers was standing in Kuwait and one tower was standing in Arizona. So the question is, that time when we were standing there around 100 meter up in the sky, we talked to a gentleman in Arizona midnight around 1 o'clock there, and we thought about saving living beings. And then, whilst thinking of saving living beings, first aid is on the forefront. And Jitubai, thank you very much. And Ashokji, thank you very much for being part of this noble and human cause. And in this journey, we are joined by Mr. Madhubura ji, Kirti D'Souza ji, and Shri Ram Prasad ji, and many other our global ambassadors. Thank you all of them for being part of this journey so far. I was talking to Kirti ji that from many days we are doing programs, and every day. Yesterday there were 3 programs. Today there's another. After this, there's another program. But cutting the long story short, I'll come to straight away to the first day. This is a very, very important day in my life as well. I've been saved myself at least 3 times before coming to my life. And similarly, I've been associated in various situations where I've been able to help people in distress, providing first aid to them and saving their lives. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was first aid day is very important in our lives. And first aid always very rightly the slogan is being said is first aid saves lives. And this is how true this, nothing more can be true than this. First aid really save lives. And first aid, if not given, can take lives also. I have a few examples to have with me. This is about me. I'm the president of GSHP. Very proudly, I say that our GSHP is working around the clock, like Ashokji was saying, 24/7, all the time, 12 hours. We from Indian subcontinent and 12 hours. Jitubai doesn't sleep. So, we are working around the clock 24/7. Just about first aid. What is first aid? First aid saves lives. It is the immediate assistance or care given to a person who has been injured or suddenly became ill from the moment of the accident until availability of the specialized medical care. This is something which we provide before a trained paramedics or a doctor comes at the scene or at the accident spot. Now, I will just talk about one study of Lancet. A study in Lancet has shown that about 15% who survived needed at least 30 minutes of resuscitation. If, sometimes we lose the golden hours. What does it say about healthcare if even celebrities don't get critical first aid? I'm talking about India. I will quote few incidences where the celebrities, why celebrities only? Why not the common people? The common people they also should have access to a critical first aid. Why not? First aid save lives. The right to health and right to timely medical care is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. But are we getting medical care? We have a fundamental right to receive point of care advanced first aid within 4 minutes. But people in need don't always get it. I just take you back to Delhi case in December 16, 2012. The rape victim Nirbhaya was transferred from a place called Munirka to Safdarjung Hospital, a distance of 6.2 kilometers, allegedly covered in 45 minutes without any help. Can you understand? If she would have got help, she would have been surviving in this world. Who knows? MC chairman Imtiaz Khan died on April 23rd, 1998 at his office in the building of Health Department of MC and DMC. Were advanced resuscitation measures administered to him? No, it was not. Similarly, Congress leader Jesh Pilot, who was a cabinet minister as well in 2000 in a car accident in Dosa, he went into coma, and when he was transferred to Swai Mansingh Hospital, his condition worsened and the golden hour was lost. We lost one president of India, ex-president of India, Gyani Jail Singh Ji. He died in Chandigarh. Similarly, the golden hour was lost. He was not provided the much required first aid. Just recently, few years back, former Delhi Chief Minister Sahab Singh Verma, our own Gopinath Munde, the Union Minister for Rural Development, he met with an accident near roundabout, Delhi at 6 a.m. on June 3, 2014, and he was brought to AIMS by his driver and assistant. He was not breathing even when he was brought. So the driver, the assistant, nobody was knowing the first aid techniques. Why the advanced life care ambulance couldn't reach the spot? Did we lose President Abdul Kalam because of not providing him first aid? Did we lose that valuable resource as APJ Abdul Kalam? His secretary quoted that when the former president, he was in 2 minutes in speech at IIM Shillong, his eyes were 3/4 closed as he collapsed. But he was not given CPR. Although his secretary tried to revive him, but there was a doctor attached to him. So that's how maybe we lost APJ Abdul Kalam. If the dignitaries like APJ Abdul Kalam we can lose because of not providing first aid or CPR on time, this shows that we are lacking somewhere. A study in the Lancet shows that about 15% of patients who survived needed at least 30 minutes of resuscitation. Why was not advanced CPR given to Abdul Kalam for the full period? These are questions to be asked, and these questions will not only haunt me, this will haunt the whole humanity. Why we could not save Abdul Kalam? Why we could not save this gentleman who has shown light to millions and millions of people? He is a role model to maybe around 7.5 billion people across the globe. Sheila Dikshit died on July 20, very recently, July 20, 2019. And she was transferred to the hospital in a car, a distance of 6 kilometers, which takes up to 24 minutes. She had a cardiac arrest on the way, that's why she could not survive. Now, the cine star, the Amitabh Bachchan, was saved because of a timely local first aid. On August 2nd, 1982, on the sets of film Coolie, he had a near fatal accident and was shifted to nearby hospital. Because he was given first aid, that's why he could be saved. The early treatment helped in saving his life. Ladies and gentlemen, we have really lost many people because of not being provided first aid. I'm sure our doctor, the speaker of the day, will take us through that why first aid is so important. But I wanted to share with you that how important first aid on time is required, how much it is life-saving. First aid saves lives. I will just share 10 powerful reasons to learn about it, how the first aid saves lives. Basic first aid can mean the difference between life and death. A Red Cross survey showed a staggering 59% of death from injuries would have been preventable had first aid been given before the emergency services arrived. This is the reason one. First aid always saves lives. Reason two, first aid reduces recovery time. First aid can have a huge impact on someone's period of recovery and can mean the difference between having a short-term or more permanent disability. I've seen it myself. I've handled people, provided them first aid. I've seen that it reduces the recovery time if you can provide the first aid at right time. First aid reduces hospital time as well. Early intervention with first aid can reduce the hospital time the patient needs to stay in the hospital. These are very, very important reasons. Reason four, first aid prevents medical situation deteriorating. Knowing the basics of first aid can prevent a bad situation from getting a patient who's bleeding from a deep cut without intervention. The severe blood loss by applying simple pressure using first aid techniques can prevent a medical emergency for rapidly deteriorating and stabilize the patient until further medical help arrives. I tell you, the best response time in the world for an ambulance to reach is United Kingdom, is UK, and that is 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, we always say of the platinum 10 minutes and then the golden hour. If we are able to provide help in first 10 minutes, we can save many, many precious lives. First aid can reduce unnecessary visit to hospitals. Not every accident ends up in hospital, but still needs medical attention. Like we used to have in our early days, in our student days, we used to have, nose bleeding. So this can be a first aid is given. So this can easily help in reducing unnecessary visit to hospitals. First aid can reduce the amount of pain experienced by casualties. If this, knowing how to respond helps you stay calm in an emergency situation. Say provide emotional support to the patient and help prevent. If we know it, that we are able to provide the first aid, the bandaging and dressing, it can really reduce a lot of pain. Crucial communication for the emergency services, staying with the patient until the emergency services arrive. We always say, whenever we have to provide first aid, the doctor always tells them, please keep talking to the patient. Don't let him sleep. Just keep engaging him. So if first aid arrives before the medical help reaches, this crucial communication is really very important for saving precious human lives. First aid increases awareness and reduces your susceptibility. Learning first aid and become alert to potential hazards and medical issues and awareness, and allows us to take better care of ourselves and communities around. So we can save many precious lives if we learn first aid techniques, if we learn CPR. First aid makes us feel empowered. Learning first aid will always give you the confidence to act appropriately when an incident or accident happens. And it is vitally important to deal with any life-saving injuries before reaching for the ambulance. It is always very useful to know when and if to move someone following an accident and when they should be kept still. We do not, sometimes we have a common understanding that if a person meets with an accident, give him some water, give him this, give him that, always rub his palms and stuff like that. This should not be the case. I will make our speaker to the expert speaker to speak on that. But those things are really dangerous. So we have to learn the first aid techniques. I will now say at GSHP, first aid, always we say first aid save lives. We just don't only talk, we do it well. We just only don't talk, we do it well. This is one of the events where I could help an accident victim by providing him the first aid, and we could save a few precious lives. So, this is not this maybe the God always takes you there when wherever God wants you to. But I always feel that if we are first aid trained, and we all GSHPNs, if we are trained in first aid, we can save many precious human lives. On this day, we, with the permission of Chairman and Vice Chairman, Shri Jitu Patel and Shri Ashok Garlapati, GSHP will start first aid training course in October in collaboration with like-minded partners. As on this is our commitment today to first aid save lives. This is, this course content can be action at an emergency, priority of treatment, what to do if someone is unconscious and breathing, the recovery position for adults, children and babies, what to do if someone is unconscious and not breathing, heart attacks, CPR, differences between adult, baby and child CPR, choking, theory and practical, drowning, preparing for an emergency, things to think about before the event, first aid kits, the bleeding, nosebleeds, subjective nose and ears, amputated parts, eye injuries, burns, electrocution, scalds, and fire. These are the course contents which we are planning to start through GSHP. Course contents is poisoning, corrosive and non-corrosive, head injuries, concussions and compressions, spinal injuries, fitting, seizures, and febrile convulsions, asthma, acute allergic reactions, Time period, of course, we are starting is 5 days, each day is 2 sessions. Timing is flexible. The fees, this is just I'm a rough idea putting it across today because today is the world's first aid day. So I thought that we'll start this course and we'll offer discounts and even free to the people who are underprivileged and the weaker section of society. We will give from GSHP first aid competency certificate will be issued after the online examination. So this is our commitment to GSHP is committed to save lives, and GSHP will make sure that whatever is required to be done will be done in order to train the people, train the Indians, train the world around in the first aid and providing them good training in the first aid as well as CPR, because all the students require first aid training, all the drivers require first aid training, all the people who goes to the work require first aid training. Everybody, all the people, 1.35 billion people in India requires first aid training. 7.5 billion people across the globe requires first aid training. So GSHP has taken a mission to provide this first aid training with the like-minded partners by collaborating, and we will make sure that all of us, the GSHP is committed to save lives, and the first aid, like first aid, save lives. So let us become a lifesaver. Let's become a lifesaver, all of us. Let's save a life. Let us commit to ourselves that all of us will try to save one life in our lifetime. One life, gentlemen and ladies, one life. Let us commit ourselves on this world's first aid day. Let's commit to save one life in our lifetime so that nobody gets killed, nobody gets succumb to the injuries without getting the first aid, like our own Abdul Kalam ji, our own President Abdul Kalam ji happened. So GSHP committed to save lives and first aid save lives. So let's become a lifesaver. Let's be a GSHP hero and let's save all living beings around us. First aid is for everyone and everywhere. I always say that whatever we repeatedly do, that is the excellence, that is not an act, it becomes an habit, like Aristotle said, like our own Virat Kohli is doing centuries after centuries. I'm sure all of us will start getting training in first aid and then start implementing it practically to save human lives. Thank you very much. In any case, you can always contact me, Shri Ashok Garlapati ji and Shri Jitu Patel ji. Our addresses and phone numbers and email IDs are given here. I thank you very much, and again congratulate SOS, KAHO and GSHP on this World First Aid Day to save precious human lives. Let us all commit ourselves on this day to save all precious human lives and make sure that no one dies in front of us. We are able to provide first aid. We are able to train our people around us, our family members, our colleagues, our friends, relatives, our neighbors, all around us, to make sure that whenever any exigency, any emergency, any incident happens around us, we can save a human life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal, and really very interesting that we have decided to start a course on first aid in GSHP. This was one of the questions that was floating around. You have preempted and answered that question. Thank you so much. It's now a pleasure to invite our youthful chairman, Dr. Jitu Patel, who has been an inspiring person and inspiration for all of us here. Jitu Bhai sits in USA, as was said. He's the CEO of Global Safety Consultants USA, Director of Global Safety Institute USA. He's a CPEA, FASSP Fellow of the American Safety Society, and is the chairman of GSHP. He's an international HSC consultant who has a BS in chemistry, an MPhil in fuel science, and he comes with an experience of more than 3 decades in HSC. His enthusiasm and commitment to the world of HSC is unparalleled, and his contribution to the community has been so great that he has been bestowed more than 15 awards. And it's going to take a lot of time to discuss those awards in detail. Anyway, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here, sir, today. Thank you very much. Welcome, Dr. Jitu Patel.
I seem to be having some technological difficulties. When I try to get to share screen, the message it shows you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So is it okay for me to, thank you. Thank you very much.
Kamal, you can stop sharing, so he can do it, I think.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I think you can do it now, Jitsab, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, Jitubhai, can
Wonderful.
see.
Wonderful. Thank you. All I want to share with you is that Ashok ji, Ram Prasad ji, who is in charge of this seminar or webinar, and Dr. Kamal did a wonderful job. And I want to just extend the warm welcome to all CAHO participants, as well as SOS Seeds of Sustainability, which is headed by our beloved Kirti ji, who is the focal point for connecting the dots for us, and of course the GSHP, all the participants. So very warm welcome, and it's a delight to be on this particular seminar. Dr. Kamal ji made my life very easy. He has really described first aid very beautifully. And all I can say is that I was so impressed with the presentation that he had made yesterday on road safety. It is really paramount of importance that every single soul must listen to that and follow his advice, so that all 1.5 lakhs or roughly speaking 500 deaths daily occurs in India only, and so many thousand daily injured with multi-million dollar worth damage. It really, the country has to undergo. With his advice, we can reduce it, and possibly we should be looking for a zero incident as far as the road and traffic are concerned. And this leads me to talk about a little more that I think something is not really happening. My slide you're saying is seeing, but it's not. There it is. I worked for chemical industries for almost 18 years in UK, and dealt with the materials which were not only just carcinogen, reactive, highly explosive, all kinds of things you can think of, we have dealt with in bulk. And if we don't understand the actual need for first aid, and in those days, we used to call first aid and CPR, then I think we are asking for trouble. And I have survived those 18 years in United Kingdom's heavy chemical manufacturing company only because they had a superb discipline. Every single employee, starting from a blue-collar employee in the workshop to the CEO of the corporation, must undergo first aid and CPR training, and it is a mandatory regardless of gender, age, or position, including CEO, as I mentioned. And our whenever something happened, there was always readily available first aid assistance. So I'm going to share with you that background I come from, and thereafter 21 years, I worked for oil and gas operations, which Ashok ji is already heavily engaged in Kuwait Oil Company. And I was with Aramco, which is about 12 to $13 trillion worth asset, plus 250,000 people. We had to take care of them on a daily basis. If anything goes wrong, we have to have there also, being ahead of the loss prevention and safety, which is covering health, safety, environment. It was made mandatory before I even retired for every single person must undergo first aid and CPR. Not only that, the company had extended it to general public, the families of the employees, not only just the families of the direct employers, but also the contracting employees. 700 major contractors work for this industry, and every single person regardless of where he came from, multilingual, multicultural background people who had no idea, but that first aid and CPR was taught to each and every individual. So coming to the point here, what is the importance of first aid? Dr. Kamal already made a very beautiful, giving a lot of examples, which he personally has also faced and made a lot of contributions. And you could see that in the newspaper, which was really a very pleasant surprise to me, knowing that who we are working and mingling with. He was a hero, and that unpleasant though it may be, the fact remains that accidents do happen, and any accident site is not a pleasant scene. If an accident happens in the workplace, you cannot be a helpless witness. Simply standing by can potentially worsen the situation. This is why it is important to have at least a basic knowledge of first aid. At its most basic, first aid is the initial assistance given to a victim of injury or illness. Composed of relatively simple techniques that can be performed with rudimentary equipment, first aid is usually carried out by an ordinary layperson like any one of us until professional medical assistant arrives. Providing quick medical treatment until professional assistant arrives can save lives, which we saw in Dr. Kamal's presentation few times. What are the major benefits of being trained in first aid? It affords people with the ability to provide help during various emergency situations. If someone ingests hazardous substances or suffers health-related issues like a heart attack, a natural disaster, or even a person knowledgeable in first aid becomes more than just another bystander. Instead, they become an invaluable support not only to victims, but also to professional emergency responders and medical practitioners. First aid helps ensure that the right methods of administering medical assistance are provided timely. Knowing how to help a person in emergency situations is extremely important. We all know that it takes 6 minutes for a human brain to expire due to lack of oxygen. And we are amongst the many physicians right here. They can tell us more, and we are waiting to hear more from our chief presenter. Therefore, lack of first aid training will not be of much help to a person in need of medical assistance. Knowledge in first aid also benefits the individual themselves, whether the emergency affects themselves directly or involves people they live and work within the first aid stems the severity of an emergency in a given time and place. Who should be trained in first aid? While everyone can benefit from first aid training, it may be a more necessary requirement for certain people. People who educate and watch over children ideally should be able to perform first aid. Daycare center personnel and nannies should be able to assist children immediately in case of any emergency. Lifeguards, there are swimming pools where I am in Arizona. It's extremely hot. It's no different from Kuwait desert. Lifeguards should also be certified in first aid procedures. Various businesses require their employees to be trained in first aid. The type and extent of the training depends on the job specifics. However, anyone who works in high-risk environments should have basic first aid knowledge. Therefore, many employees in factories, machine shops, and industrial plants must be having a first aid procedure readily available, as well as people who are trained adequately. Accidents will always happen. Therefore, properly trained individuals and the right first aid equipment help ensure better safety for everyone on or off the job. Without the proper first aid, simple injury could turn into something much more severe consequences. Many fatalities resulting from accidents and emergency situations result from lack of immediate response, timely response of medical treatment. So therefore, first aid does not just facilitate recovery, but it helps save lives. In general, lack of first aid skills endangers up to 150,000 lives in US alone. And this number is countless in our own country, India. The countless number of people who die each year globally, including in India, due to suffocation from blocked airways and heart attacks could be saved with first aid training. I wanted to give you so many examples, which Dr. Kamal made it so easy for me by elaborating with variety of different types of examples. But I'm going to share with you one example. A baby was rescued from choking by a teacher friend. And that teacher happened to be my better half, my wife. She had just undergone the first aid training in Saudi Arabia in the company that I mentioned to you, that we had made it mandatory for all employees, but it was extended to the general public, in which I recommended my wife that she should take that training, and she did. And the same day, she went to see a baby of her teacher friend and found that baby was choking. Only 1 hour before she was trained, and she had to practice that, and she managed to rescue that baby from dying. And these are the benefits that we can derive from the first aid training. An infant, on the other hand, who also drowned and died only because of there was a well-trained lifeguard available who tried to rescue that first aid or the CPR to that infant, but the mother became so emotional and she snatched the baby and she started to do all cuddling with crying and screaming and would not let that well-trained person exercise or administer that CPR. That child was needed and that child died. So point here is that ignorance has no time, no position there. Had she been trained, that child could have been also saved. Dr. Kamal already mentioned of our fatherly figure, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. And when I heard, I was in Phoenix, Arizona, I was so saddened, but the immediate plane available, I flew to India. I was in Hyderabad. I went I had a lot of discussion with all my and Ashokji's friends and colleagues that we did so many things, and we even went and paid a visit to Apollo Hospital. And I will just show you the picture on the next slide. Bottom line is, it is sad to see there are so many losses that we have incurred only because of lack of this education in first aid and CPR. But unfortunately, somehow some technological problem and it's not moving fast. But the picture I was going to show you, that was in Apollo Hospital with the managing director, the operation vice president, Dr. Rao, and the chair lady in 2015, October, after the death of Dr. Kalam. We made a really visit, very angry visit it was. And I mentioned that you physicians, you are running such a big Apollo Hospital chain. You should be responsible to train and do something for the community, which they did. And they immediately started working on it. They had about 40 well-trained people trained the training. They increased that quota. And in Hyderabad, they did some camp and campaign to train this thing, which I'm proud that our president, Dr. Kamal, has already vowed today to start first aid program. And we will be very happy to support his mission and what announcement he's made. we will be all the time, full time with him for its all success. With that, Ram Prasad ji, thank you for this opportunity. And I thank Kirti ji very much for connecting these dots and making this thing happen possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jitubhai. It was a very interesting and inspiring talk. I now invite Madhubur Raji to introduce our expert speaker today, Dr. Saravana Kumar. Madhuji, over to you.
So you have to unmute your mic. Madhuji?
Thank you. Our subject matter expert speaker of this morning, Dr. Saravana Kumar, holds a MBBS and MD and is a practicing physician and also qualified in emergency medicine. In addition, he has done his MBA in hospital management from BITS Pilani and has also obtained a postgraduate diploma in hospital, graduate diploma in medical college, medical law and ethics from the National Law School, Bangalore. He is current group head and consultant in emergency medicine and is the GM and unit head after Dr. Mehta's Hospital, a 200-bedded multi-speciality hospital at Chetpad, Chennai. He has obtained his quality and patient safety training experience from Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organizations India, CAHO, and Association of Healthcare Providers India, AHPI. He was instrumental in designing and bringing emergency medicine standards quality training program, disaster life support program, national cardiac life support training programs by SEMI, CAHO and AHPI. Dr. Saravana Kumar is currently the National Secretary of Society for Emergency Medicine India, Editor-in-Chief of Health Quest, ER Guidelines, first of its kind, EM Safety Guidelines for India, drafted by adopting quality best practices of Indian Space Research Organization by SEMI and AHPI. He carries many laurels and awards, and to speak about them, there will need a separate session. Dr. Saravana Kumar, we are honored to have you here this morning as the expert speaker. Welcome, Doctor.
Let me try to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to speak among such learned members here. I'm an emergency physician basically, and clearly this subject is very close to my heart because I am one of the clinicians, or the first clinician, who actually see what difference it could actually make to a life of a patient and their relatives if the first aid is provided outside. Because we are the doctors who actually see if the first aid is not done, what kind of an scenario or a sequence it can lead to once the patient reaches some hospital, where most of the time it's a bit too late for us to save that patient's. We clearly feel many a times we could have clearly saved this patient's life if some first aid could have been provided outside. So it's very unfortunate scenario in India, as many of my previous speakers spoke, where clearly in Western world, the awareness about first aid and also basic first aid training is a very commonly taught subject even in elementary schools. It's extremely unfortunate, and you might be quite surprised to even know the first aid training, including CPR, is not even in our basic curriculum of MBBS in India. Right? That's quite surprising. I'm sure that's quite surprising for most of you. And only now we are introducing basic life support and ACLS training as one of the mandatory trainings for MBBS graduates. So that's the situation here, right? So with this, let's discuss about few of the common scenarios today. I've been told we have a wide group of audience today from different fields. So what I have done today is basically I've come up with few common emergency scenarios we face across our country. and few first aid tips for those emergencies. And we will have an open session at the end of the presentation where clearly we will have discussions on things which are not covered in those slides, because in 30 minutes it becomes a bit difficult to cover many things. I also have a couple of videos to show you on the right techniques to perform some of the basic first aids. So I will share those videos as well today. So on the outset, so we clearly have various emergencies and various first aids to be done. But let me quickly tell you, today we will only touch upon those first aids, which basically if you don't do that, will eventually lead to either a severe morbidity or mortality. So what I'm trying to say here is, assuming you have a small cut at home, say when you are trying to cook or trying to cut some vegetables, you might end up getting a bleed, and eventually you know what to do. You will either try stopping a bleed or give some compression. So we are not going to be dealing with that kind of emergencies, because clearly those are not going to lead to a life-threatening situation. We will only touch upon some of the emergencies where your life is at risk, and how do we give first aid to those kind of patients is what we will deal in the slides. However, I'm more than happy to answer all the queries after the session on any emergencies which you wanted to know about. So let me quickly jump on to my first scenario. But before that, I would like to tell everybody, kindly remember the following thing which I'm going to say now. There are basically two things which kills a patient. Two things which you need to remember is, one is clearly your breathing, your respiration, right? Followed by something to do with your circulation. So basically anything to do with your airway, breathing, ventilation, oxygenation is a much dangerous thing, because that kills you much faster, because you cannot live without breathing for say more than 50 seconds or 1 minute. Eventually you're going to get unconscious and you're going to die. So just remember this, anything to do with respiratory issues are quite dangerous, and you need to be providing first aid immediately to save life. That is followed by anything to do with circulation. When I say circulation, for example, you might bleed to death, but you got still some time to save this patient, right? So it doesn't kill immediately. However, anything to do with cardiac functions, for example, a sudden cardiac arrest is a killer. So anything to do with respiratory and cardiac, please be aware that you should be providing first aid immediately. So these are the two things you need to clearly remember. So let's quickly go to our first scenario. So a very common scenario is somebody who throws seizures or fits, which we call in a very common language. So what do we do if somebody throws a fit or seizures? It's quite common practice here, thanks to all the movies which we see, where you go end up giving somebody something in the hand, especially something with an iron keychain or whatever in the hands to stop these seizures. But what we need to understand is, clearly, if somebody is throwing a seizure, so this is going to stop on its own within a minute or two. You cannot really control it. All you have to do is ensure if somebody is throwing seizures or fits, make sure the person is in a safe environment. He is not having any sharp instruments or objects closer to him, because unfortunately, these involuntary movements, in case if he comes in contact with a sharp object, they can injure themselves. So remove any hard or sharp materials from surrounding areas. Stay with him until he fully recovers, and kindly keep him on a recovery position. I'm going to show the pictures of recovery position in the next slide. So this is the recovery position which is recommended, not just for seizures, for in any emergencies. If the patient is conscious or semi-conscious, is able to breathe on his own, we recommend keeping patients on a recovery position like this until an emergency help arrives or an ambulance service arrives. So as you could clearly see, a left lateral position is the preferred position, where you can fold the patient's knees and arms so that the patient doesn't roll over or the victim doesn't roll over. Remember, a recovery position in a left lateral is much preferred. Try to see how we can put somebody on a recovery position, or try to practice this, or you might have some practice videos. So one thing to remember out of this class is, always it is preferred to keep any victim who's unresponsive or who has suffered seizures in a left lateral position. I'm not talking about trauma here, so it doesn't apply to any trauma. This applies to every other scenario in emergency. For example, be it an electrocution, be it somebody who has drowned, be it somebody who has become suddenly unconscious, unresponsive, or somebody who has got seizures. The preferred position to nurse them is basically on a lateral position, because anybody who's definite or who's unresponsive or semi-conscious, the more flat you put them, there is a possibility that their airway gets obstructed because of something called as a tongue fall. So which will obstruct their airway. And as I told you at the start of the presentation, anything which obstructs the airway or prevents somebody from breathing is an immediate killer, right? So you have to be very careful with it. So learn how to put somebody on a lateral position, and clearly do not try, especially this is in case of fits, don't try to restrain somebody, remove any sharp objects, and don't try to force open their mouth. And the last point is also pretty important, not just for seizures, but pretty much for most of the emergencies, including trauma emergencies. It's a very common practice where you try to give somebody something orally. Somebody becomes unconscious on the roadside, somebody is a trauma victim, somebody has got seizures. The immediate response is to go rush and try to give him some water in the mouth, try to give him some sodas, try to give him some juice, sugar syrups and things like that, which is an absolute no-no. The reason being is anybody who is semi-responsive or semi-conscious, they wouldn't have a good swallowing, would say strength to swallow it appropriately. So what happens is, anything you give in their mouth, there is always a possibility that goes to the respiratory passage, that is to the lungs. And clearly, if it enters the respiratory passage, clearly it's going to upset the respiration or oxygenation, and the patient might even die. So clearly remember, left lateral position, nothing to be given in case of an emergency orally to anybody, please. So that's two things which you need to remember. Let's quickly cover about another common scenario which we see in Indian context, where there is a dog bite. So what do you do in case of a dog bite? So clearly make sure you clean the bite with the running tap water, nothing wrong with that, and soap and water, and kindly take him to an hospital immediately. Rabies is still prevalent in India, and it's a deadly disease. There is no treatment for it, as you know. And clearly anybody with a dog bite, don't ignore assuming this dog is vaccinated or a home dog. It's always better to go get checked. And deeper wounds are more prone for rabies infection. So clearly any bites and stings, so be it a dog bite, or it is also quite common in India, we see cat bites, we also see monkey bites sometimes. So all these, any bites with an animal, make sure you thoroughly clean that area with soap and water, right? Do not panic, but kindly go to a doctor, because you will need rabies vaccination. The best first aid you can provide is clean the wound at the spot, come to an hospital immediately. Do not assume you're not going to get infected because the dog seems to be vaccinated or is a domestic dog. So do not fall for it. So that is one. And don't assume it's non-infectious, and you know the vaccine status of the dog. Clearly any bites, you need to still come to the hospital. And especially if it is a sting, for example, you might get a bee sting or a scorpion sting sometimes. Bee stings are more notorious to cause allergic reactions to you, and it might obstruct your airway. So please do meet a doctor, and don't try to remove the bee stings by yourself, because if you know, the venom of a bee is typically on the sting, and when you try to remove it, for example, when you try to squeeze it and remove it, what you are actually trying to do is by mistake, you are pressing the sting, which actually leads to more of such venom getting into your circulation or surface. So the ideal method of removing a bee sting which is stuck in your body is basically to scrape it off, either by using a visiting card or some kind of a card or paper. Do not press and remove it. So that's something which you need to remember. I'm just touching upon other things beyond the slides, because I'm not including everything in the slides. So that's the reason why I need to go slightly off track. So the other common emergency which we also see in many of our Indian rural cities especially is snake bite, quite prevalent in India and Sri Lanka especially. So there are a lot of myths, again, especially when it comes to snake bite, thanks to the movie industry, which has kind of encouraged more myths than the facts about snake bite. So anything to do with the snake bite, remember, not all bites are poisonous. and clearly stay calm. The context behind snake bite is avoid this venom being circulated in your system very fast. So what do you do, or how do you provide first aid in this case? So clearly provide a small tourniquet above the bite area. The common mistake which most of our people make is they try to tie it too tight. So what happens is, if you tie anything too tight above the bite area, unfortunately, you are impeding the circulation to the entire area, which will only lead to more harm than good. So any tourniquet which you are applying above a bite area, ensure that at least you got a space for one finger of yours to go in easily. I'll show some pictures in the next slides. And do not allow any patient with a snake bite to walk around. The reason is, more somebody walks around, typically the circulation increases. So that means you are providing an opportunity for this venom to circulate across the body faster. That's the thing which you need to avoid. So any snake bite, especially, kindly rest this victim. Do not ask him to move around. Make sure you try a tourniquet above the bite area if possible, but not too tight or not too loose. Clearly, don't waste time trying to find for the snake, because no hospital or no doctor is going to treat you looking at the type of snake. The treatment for the snake bite is dependent on the symptoms which you are going to show. So people trying to bring a snake to the hospital is really not helpful. And immobilize the bitten limb if possible. So make sure it doesn't move the limb if possible, and take him to the hospital as early as possible. So you can see here clearly this is a way not to do it. You could see 3 or 4 rope or ties around this victim who has gotten a bite. If you tie something like this, what happens is, clearly the circulation to the entire limb gets cut off, leading to consequences like we may have to even remove the entire limb because the limb has died without circulation. So be careful with that. Clearly, do not cut open the wound, try to suck the venom out. All those things are only myths, they're not going to help. And don't try wasting time washing the wound and things. Snake bite is something which you need to be careful about, but nothing to panic around. Try to get medical help as early as possible. So let's come to some of the medical emergencies which we commonly see. Chest pain is very commonly seen emergency, and there's always a confusion around heart attack or MI versus a cardiac arrest. There is a difference between both. Just to simply put it, heart attack is nothing but the blood vessels supplying your heart. If there is a blockage, your heart doesn't get its own food supply or blood supply. So that is called a heart attack. So that's very different from cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is something where your normally functioning heart has suddenly stopped functioning. That means your entire circulation has collapsed. You need to now try to restart the heart. So that's cardiac arrest. Whereas in heart attack, it's clearly the heart is functioning. There is no problem with the functioning of the heart. The problem is some of the blood vessels which is supplying the heart or feeding the heart has blocked. Because of this, there's severe pain when in the chest. So these both are very different conditions, and the first aid for both is very, very different. So let's quickly look at how do you recognize a heart attack. So clearly, how do you recognize a heart attack is somebody complains of chest discomfort, somebody says it's an unusual feeling. And always remember, heart attacks need not be presenting with only chest pain. It could be an upper abdominal pain, and it could have some vague symptoms as well, especially those people who are diabetic. So they may not show classical symptoms of an heart attack. So the typical symptom of an heart attack includes chest pain, and typically the victim would tell you this is such a kind of pain or a feeling which he has never experienced in his life before. So it's a very unique feeling where you have both heaviness as well as pain on the chest. Right? So that's a very clear symptom of an heart attack. And discomfort specifically around the neck region and around the arm region, especially the left arm. You should be very careful about if somebody complains of these symptoms. So it could be an heart attack, and you might also see patients sweating profusely and also trying to gasp for air. So these are some of the symptoms of heart attack, right? So if you see any of these symptoms with any of your relatives, loved ones, friends, please be aware, do not ignore these symptoms, and clearly make sure you ask him to rest, reassure, get him as fast as possible to an emergency unit. I would also suggest you have this at all your homes, and simple aspirin tablets, which has got many benefits, not just in cardiac, but also in terms of pain relief and other areas. So clearly have an aspirin. And if you have aspirin with you, you might ask this patient to chew aspirin before you bring him to the hospital. That's the only medication which you can suggest. But what's the key in case of chest pain is the earlier intervention, the better outcome it is. So do not waste time. If you find somebody who has got chest pain in your office, in your work area, make sure you move them to a hospital at the earliest, as early as possible. And if you have aspirin with you, kindly give them 300 milligrams of aspirin to chew. They come around, each tablet of aspirin comes in about 75 milligrams. So you need to probably give them about 4 aspirins. Right? Do not delay, do not neglect symptoms. Do not say, the most common problem we find here is you ignore these symptoms thinking this could be gastric. Let me wait till tomorrow morning so that I can go back to my regular doctor and go meet my GP. But it's always not advisable. Kindly get in and meet your emergency physician at the earliest, right? So then let's come to another important scenario where there is a sudden unresponsiveness. What we need to remember is not everybody who has become suddenly unresponsive means cardiac arrest, right? There are various reasons for you to become unresponsive. For example, you have something called as a syncope, your blood pressure has suddenly dropped, postural hypotension. These are some of the reasons why you might become unresponsive. Sometimes even your low sugar levels for somebody who's diabetic may lead to drowsiness and unresponsiveness. So please be wary to differentiate between unresponsiveness versus cardiac arrest. I'll tell you in a little while how we can go about it. So if somebody is unresponsive or somebody has fallen unresponsive just in front of your own eyes, who's previously normal, talking to you, walking around, what would you first do? Check for the victim's response. When you respond, if you hear him trying to speak, or if you hear him trying to communicate but not able to do so, is only in a semi-conscious state, clearly nothing to fear immediately. Try to put him on a left lateral position, try to get medical help at the earliest. Right? You don't have to do anything beyond that. There is no CPR here. Clearly get an ambulance and activate your emergency medical services and wait for somebody to arrive. And this is where you need to remember the recovery position is very, very important. So try to keep him on a lateral position, try talking to him, try to get a medical help. You don't have to really do anything, and it's really not something dangerous which you can intervene on. Whereas there is another type of unresponsiveness which is called as cardiac arrest. So how do you see if somebody is cardiac arrest, or how do you presume somebody is cardiac arrest? Assume a victim has suddenly collapsed in front of your own eyes, and if he is not responding to your call or to your shout or even to your shake, if he is not responding, this is a very serious condition. Assume this as a cardiac arrest. You don't have to really think about whether I should check pulse now, whether I should check breathing now. You don't have to really go into those complexities. Anybody who has fallen unconscious, if he is responding, partially responding, nothing to worry. If there is no response at all, he has fallen unconscious, not responding at all, please assume this victim has gone into a situation called as cardiac arrest. And this is a very important thing for all of us to understand, because with cardiac arrest, if you intervene early and start your CPR or chest compressions, the chances of survival is much, much better. Please remember, in case of a cardiac arrest, the probability of survival, or in simple terms, with each passing minute, there is a 10% chances or decrease in chances of somebody to survive. That means with every single minute delay, his chance of survival decreases by 10%. That means at the end of 10 minutes, there is literally, you have lost him completely. So you need to be very quick, one. At the end of 2 minutes or 3 minutes, your brain tissue starts to die. So technically, so that means even if you have intervened at 5th minute or 6th minute, unfortunately, you might revive the heart, but the person is brain dead because the brain was without oxygen supply for 3 minutes. So that's dangerous. So clearly in cardiac arrest, you need to identify this condition. When in doubt, it's always better to start compressions. There is no harm in that. Immediately provide CPR, and I clearly urge every participant in this group to go learn chest compression techniques, and I will also show you a quick video on how to check responsiveness and do chest compressions. Place your hand in the middle of the chest, and you need to do about 100 to 120 compressions. There are various variations to this. For example, whether you provide airway, whether you do breathing first, chest compression first, what is the ratio of chest compression with breathing, 30:2, so many variations. But for now, I would clearly say, as a layperson, forget about all those things. only focus on chest compression, because once his heart is going to start, the person is automatically going to breathe. So don't confuse yourself as whether I should open the airway, what is ABC, what is CAB, but there are so many mnemonics around. Don't just confuse yourself. If you find somebody in a cardiac arrest, straight away go ahead and start chest compressions for these patients. Right? Place your hands in the center of the chest. You give about 100 to 120 compressions at a depth of about 5 centimeters. Let me quickly move to a short video on how do we assess responsiveness and do chest compressions, because this is a very important first aid technique for all of us to know and understand. Can you see my video screen?
Not
Yes,
yet.
it's seen.
Yes? Okay.
You think you'll have to play it now?
Start. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Doctor, the video has not come on. It is only a still to do, still is just on the screen.
After you have to choose the desktop sharing, then play the video. Stop sharing this one and choose the desktop.
Dr. Silva.
Okay, so that's a simple CPR technique which I showed in that video. There clearly, I would request everybody to get yourself trained in basic life support. And in the video, I'm sure you have noticed that I've been trying to give breaths by pinching the nose, and you really don't have to do that. As long as you provide chest compression, that is quite good enough. Do not delay chest compressions. Please initiate CPR immediately whenever you see a victim. Right. Let's quickly now touch upon few other common emergencies because I think we are slightly running late. So with fire and burns, there are two things which you are worried about. One, if there is a spark which might go into your eyes, if you're, say, burning crackers during Diwali, or you might have a superficial burns. So clearly, if anything in your eyes, kindly make sure you wash your eyes thoroughly with running tap water. That's good enough before you see a doctor. And the position of this washing is also important. You can please see clearly the water drips from inside to outside. So position him in a running tap water and then try to give a wash. So all you have to do is just leaving the running water over the open eyes. Just make sure it goes from the medial part, that means from inside to the outside, to remove any chemical spill, to remove any sparks. So that's the same way you wash your eyes and before you go and meet the doctor. And in case of minor burns, clearly there is a myth here that we may not or we should not put water over burns, but that's a myth. Clearly water helps in many ways. Any minor burn, or even for that matter a major burn, make sure the victim is where you get a lot of water over the victim. Clearly it helps in two things. One, it reduces pain. Two, it also helps in reducing what we call in medical terms an inflammation, so that he doesn't develop those blebs later. So clear water is good. So kindly make sure so you can rinse, or you can actually use running flow water. It doesn't have to be an ice cold water, but regular water over the burns. Okay, so let's run through quick 2 or 3 or 4 scenarios before we open the session for questioning. Assume you are traveling in a train, somebody is wheezing, somebody is asthmatic, So what do we do? Clearly, another in medicine which we can think about is having Asthalin inhaler in your first aid kits. There was a question on what I should keep in my first aid kit. So clearly have, apart from aspirin tablets, your say antiseptics and also cotton rolls, gauze pieces for arresting bleeding. Make sure you also have an Asthalin inhaler. If any of your members in the industry are suffering from breathing illness or wheezing or non-asthmatic, clearly that can help save his life. So how you can use it? So clearly in a severe asthmatic situation, you may not be able to take the puff. All you can do is you can use a plastic cover where you can spray the spray and you can try to hold it over his nose so that he can breathe that inhaler, right? So that's easier. So we're quite a common scenario where children get injured to the nose sometimes when they play around. So when they fall down, so they might have bleeding from the nose, nothing to worry about. Just reassure, tightly occlude the nose, assuming somebody is bleeding from the nose. The positioning of the victim is very important. The more you put him on lean back position, clearly you know the blood is going to drip down and go into the respiratory passage, and that's dangerous because it might occlude the airway. Always put somebody on a front leaning position, adult or child. If somebody has got a facial injury, nasal injury, bleeding from the nose, the bleeding could be because of trauma. Sometimes you do see this bleeding if somebody has got high blood pressure. Try to put them on a forward leaning position and see if you could pinch the nose to arrest the bleeding. If it is something to do with your nasal bone fracture, it should stop by itself. Do not blow the nose, and that's very important because whatever clot which has formed might get dislodged. So I'm going to say a simple tip here for everybody, especially when it comes to bleeding. Whichever part you might be bleeding in or whatever may be the reason, the simple way to stop the bleeding is to give a direct compression over the bleeding, not to wash the bleeding. The more you wash it, you will only tend to bleed more. The best way to stop the bleeding is to give direct compression over the bleeding spot. Direct compression over the bleeding. Use a clean cloth and a handkerchief, a towel, so anything which is available, just to put it over the bleeding spot and give compression. And the compression should be for at least a good 1 to 2 minutes for a good clot formation to stop. One of the common mistakes we do when we trying to stop bleeding outside is you give a compression and then you have a tendency to see whether the bleeding has stopped in 5 seconds or 10 seconds. You lift that compression and to see what has happened to the bleeding. Don't do that. Give a continuous compression. Any bleeding should naturally stop from wherever it is. Right. So the chemical we just dealt about, so wash your face. So this is something important, so which you need to remember. Assume if somebody has fallen down and you are suspecting a fracture of say a forearm or an elbow or an ankle. So what we need to do is clearly use whatever materials available with you to stabilize the fracture. I will show you in a video on how to do that. So clearly when Sir spoke, he also mentioned we don't need any special equipments to provide first aid. Whatever is available with you, use it. A simple stick, a scale can all be used to provide a stabilization, especially in case of fractures. Let me quickly jump to a 2-minute video on how do we stabilize somebody who has gotten, somebody who has fallen down and complaining of pain on the forearm and probably a fracture in the forearm region.
Forearm injury first hospital. Super simple. People the scale in any hard object. One make a newspaper. Other splitting one mailer, or in the hanky or any piece of cloth. For example, so you can tie one here. Another one. You can see here clearly, like we put a scale from here to here. His wrist and his elbow both are in the place. So with this, shirt is wearing on. So that you will not feel any pain. Exactly. When the arm move on, you will have more pain and more pain. You want the pain control. Suppose shirt is about any hanging ID card or anything, what you can do is you can leave it inside. So you can bring them to the hospital. So this is one way of doing it. In case if you don't have any of these, right? If you got only a simple piece of cloth, any rectangular sheet, say whatever you want, just take it, fold it into half, just make it into a triangle. It's quite simple. Just put this corner outside, like one outside and one inside. Very simple. You can see it. This one you can tie on this. You can or something. This you can even use a lungi cloth or towel cloth, whatever you have. Suppose you don't have anything with you at all, still it is easy to spread these fractures. If he's wearing a shirt like him, you can ask him to remove his shirt when he's from below. Just remove 2 or 3 buttons, right? Whichever side is injured with, just fold his shirt, right? And you will see you will have a button here. Just you can pin it to his collar button. This will act as great information. So it's a very simple method, especially in school children. So you can follow. This is the best one. It's a bit tight here for you. Oh, see? So we can bring him like this. Right? Great.
So that's a simple technique for splinting. So let me play the basic life support video. I heard that you couldn't see that. You can see the video now. The second one. Somebody could
Yes. Yes.
Let me play this.
Start. Are you okay? Are you okay?
So hope you were able to see both the BLS as well as the trauma video. Sorry, the splinting video.
Yes, doctor.
So you're able to see the screen now.
Yes, we were able to see that.
Okay. Right. So let me quickly move on with few of the other slides before to touch upon any other common questions which the panelists or the attendees might have.
Yeah. Can we start a few? We have a few questions. Some of them have been answered.
Yeah.
But a few are still there. So can we go ahead with that?
Yeah. I got just 2 minutes. If you could quickly and summarize on a couple of
Okay.
the important points, especially in
Please.
terms of industry, so that I can go. Probably
Yeah.
you can talk about this one. So there are 2 other common emergencies which all of us should be aware of. One is a foreign body aspiration. So something gets stuck while eating in your respiratory passage. How do you remove it? So I will show a couple of pictures for that. And the second one is very common is basically somebody gets an part amputated, usually in industrial accidents where you have these fingers or sometimes even the wrist gets amputated. So how do you provide first aid in these patients? Clearly stop the bleeding. As I said, direct compression over the part. Suppose assuming your finger is amputated or the wrist is amputated, a direct compression over the bleeding area to stop the bleeding. And then what do you do with the amputated part is something very, very important. So today's clearly there is a possibility of reimplanting all those amputated parts if you could bring them to the hospital within 6 hours of time. So don't discard any of the amputated part. Kindly clean the amputated part. If it is dirty, just wash it with the routine water and then pack it. What we need to understand here is clearly the common mistake which we do is we assume we can put that part in direct ice, which is actually not the right thing to do, and that actually does not help in reimplantation at all. So what is necessary is you put any of this amputated part in a clean plastic sheet, seal it up, and that plastic sheet you can put it in an ice box or over the ice. The idea is not to put the amputated part over the ice directly. So clearly pack it this way and send them to the hospital so that they can quickly plan for reimplantation of this. Right. So that's one thing. And another one which I wanted to share is something on how do we provide the Heimlich maneuver, or how do we remove a foreign body which is aspirated, especially when you are eating something and something gets choked. If it obstructs your airway passage, as I told you before, a complete obstruction leads to lack of oxygenation and the chances of patient collapsing is much, much higher. So how do we do that? So just look at the pictures. I hope you are able to see the screen and the pictures here. So somebody who is not able to breathe, typically they will exhibit these signs. This is called universal choking sign, where somebody is holding their neck and trying to cough it out, trying to breathe, but he's not able to do that. If somebody is showing a signs of choking, ask him, is he choking? If he is able to speak or is he able to cough, that is still a good sign. Encourage them to cough it out. Unfortunately, if he's not able to speak, he's not able to cough, all you could see is he's only holding his neck and trying to shake his head and he's not able to do anything. That could be a complete airway obstruction. You should act immediately to provide first aid to remove this foreign body. As shown in the picture, stand behind the patient, give good abdominal thrust just below the chest cage. Make sure you close your hands, keep it over the abdomen and try to push it. Quite difficult to teach you in a webinar session, but what I would strongly recommend all of you is after the session, there are plenty of videos available in YouTube where you can go and have a look on how to perform this maneuver. A very important life-saving maneuver. Please go ahead and learn this. This is called Heimlich maneuver. The name is not so important. How do you remove obstructed foreign body from the airway passage? That's important. And also in pediatrics, again, it's a lifesaver. Many times if kids unfortunately swallow something, a small toy or a hard object which gets lodged in their respiratory passage, becomes very difficult for them to breathe. So it's an urgent situation where you need to help remove this. One precaution to take is do not blindly try to scoop any foreign body from the child's mouth, because unfortunately you might push it in without realizing. The best way to do it is basically put the child on your lap as shown in the picture and give taps over the back. So put the child head down on the lap, try to give taps around the back so that the child expels it out. Right? In case if you could see the foreign body very clearly in the mouth, remove it. If you don't see it, do not ever do a blind scooping. That's going to be very, very dangerous. Right? And you all know this, how to place somebody in a left lateral position I spoke to you about in the initial part. So if somebody is unresponsive or semi-responsive, but breathing, clearly put them on left lateral position, where you use your left hand first in a high position, use your other hand to close it over the neck, move him to the side, lock his legs so that they don't roll over. So these are 4 steps, simple steps of putting somebody on a left lateral, high, put the other hand on the face, turn him to the left lateral and lock his knees so that he doesn't roll over. Quite simple technique to learn. So please do learn this, and washing we already covered about. I think with this, let me stop the presentation or a PPT. Maybe we should go and take few questions. I know we haven't covered electrocution. So let me quickly touch upon that. Electrocution is again, either you're going to see no symptoms, it's a minor electrocution. You might see probably a small burns on the localized area, and the first aid is going to be simply clean the wound, use a silver sulfadiazine ointment. What would typically an electrocution cause, and why are we worried about electrocution? Is because electrocution is one of the factors for cardiac arrest. Heart attack can lead to cardiac arrest. Drowning in the water can lead to cardiac arrest. Fall from height, road traffic accident, anything can lead to a cardiac arrest. So your principles of resuscitation remains the same. So in electrocution, what would happen? Somebody gets electrocuted, gets thrown off. 2 things might happen. One, you might have an external injury. If there is a bleeding, you will definitely stop it. If the patient is responsive, you will put him on a left lateral position and ask for an ambulance to come and help him out. If the patient is unresponsive, assume that he has gone into cardiac arrest, because electrocution will typically cause cardiac arrest because of your heart is full of impulses, right? It's basically, and now you are interfering with that with a high voltage current. Clearly the heart will stop. So the first aid which you are supposed to do in electrocution is actually your CPR. So your basic life support CPR technique comes in handy, irrespective of whatever may be the reason. That's a life-saving technique which you all need to understand and learn. I think with this, let me briefly stop and then probably we'll have few questions both from the panelists and on the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saravanan. Most of the questions that came about the past few days have been answered by you during the course of your presentation. But we still need to go through the motions of asking a few questions and having open house. Therefore, I'll just ask a few questions which have come forth from some of our members, as well as some of the participants. The first one is from Mrs. Kala Amritalingam from Colombo. As women, what are the first aid measures that need to be taken in case of burns that happen in the kitchen? Is the first question.
Okay, so clearly in any type of burns, wash it. So when I say wash it, it's not clearly rinsing it, but put it under a running tap water. So that helps in two things: one, to reduce the pain, and to reduce the inflammation. Right? Do not apply. So there is a common tendency to use turmeric and few other things over the burns, which is not good. All you have to do is running water or ice over it, and then if it's a small wound, all you have to do is apply the Silverex ointment or silver sulfatizine ointment over it. If it's a bigger wound, please get a medical help, so that like you may need some antibiotics, because what many of us don't realize is skin is the biggest organ in the human body, right? But unfortunately that's not well understood or taken care of. So any breach in the skin basically means there's chances of infection getting into your circulation and causing more trouble. So don't ignore it, especially if it's a bigger burns.
Yeah. The next one is we have from one of the participants today, Mr. Nagarjun Reddy. He is asking us as to how first aid is given when employees get exposed to hydrogen sulfide or sulfur dioxide when they are in the manufacturing plant or when they are doing work over there in the unit.
Okay. So the answer to this is going to be two parts. One, clearly any inhalation injury to chemicals, and two, any chemical burns over the skin due to any acid for that matter. So the inhalation injury, clearly you need to get them out from that place. That's the first thing which you need to do, get them out from the exposure, reduce the exposure risk, and definitely they need more oxygen to be provided. Right, so that's one. And in case of a chemical burns, it's same as your fire burns. So typically any chemical burns, make sure you keep it on the running water, so that it gets cleared off. Especially in sulfur, it might be a bit tricky because again there could be some reaction. In those situations, you may not. Whereas if it is with other acids, please do wash it and straight away bring him to a hospital. Right? The concept of first aid is always first remove the exposure or keep the scene safe, to make sure the airway and the breathing is all right, and make sure the patient doesn't land up in a cardiac trouble. Right? So that's the concept which you need to remember always.
Thank you, doctor. Another question from one of our senior colleagues here. Mr. Deven Kotecha has a question. Generally, industries have their full-time clinics or doctors and paramedic staff. How can a trained first aider be supportive to a doctor on duty in case of accidents and physical injury to the employees?
Okay, that's a very good question. Clearly, as I said, timing is the key, right? In intervention, especially with first aids, especially with conditions like cardiac arrest, for example. As I told you, each passing minute, the chances of survival decreases by 10%. We might have a doctor or a paramedic in an industry or in a company. Assume if it's a very big company where you have 1,000+ employees and it has got multiple blocks. In case of somebody collapses in your work area, typically it is going to take more than 10 minutes for those medical team to come to the spot, or for you to take this victim to the medical clinic there. So you are losing precious time. So what you should do is definitely, yes, you need to call them to come and attend to the victim immediately. So ask for help, call EMS. At the same time, whoever is the close by should start the first aid. And to start first aid, you need to have a bit of understanding on what you are supposed to do and what is a basic technique behind it. So early intervention always helps. The best person to provide first aid in case of an emergency is the person who's right next to the victim, not the clinician or an ambulance service provider who's going to come in some time.
Thank you very much. Before concluding, there are a few questions which generally passes through our mind. One of the points that came about is the number of road accidents that keep happening in India, almost 500 a day. Most often we find that even people who can provide first aid run away from providing first aid or attending to the road accident victims. Now, is there something in the law that is preventing people from coming to help others? Or is there something that we from GSHP can possibly take it up at the higher levels of the government?
I think that's a very, very significant question which you have asked. So I'm going to answer it in both law point of view and also the perception of the patients. Right. Before the Good Samaritan law by the Supreme Court, so a judgment which came in few years back, there was a feeling that if somebody takes an accident victim to the hospital, he might be unnecessarily dragged to court and may be involved in the litigation process, and that's apprehension with most of the people had to take anybody to a hospital. So clearly, by law, it encourages people to provide such a first aid and support. The Good Samaritan law very clearly says no such person who brings an accident victim to the hospital should be harassed, or he not be. It's not even necessary for him to disclose his name or his identity or his phone numbers, and he should not be dragged to the court or in any litigation unnecessarily, or very clearly the law says that. So it's only the awareness which is lacking in our parts of the country, because people still think they might be harassed if they take somebody, especially if it's a medical legal case. If I take him to a hospital, I might be pulled unnecessarily. So clearly, yes, the HSP has got significant role to play here in providing awareness of this law to the community and to encourage people to take accident victims to the nearby hospital. There is nothing to fear that like now we are going to be unnecessarily dragged or legally harassed.
Thank you. One more question, Doctor. We find that first aid is not made as a course or taught as a subject in schools and education institutions. While some industrial units have a first aid department or some kind of a compliances, we find that the concept of first aid is not inculcated right from the school going children to the college children. What could be done, or is there some suggestion that you would like to share here with us?
So I think that's a fantastic question as well. It's very unfortunate in our parts of the country where this awareness training is not even in the medical schools and the undergraduate level. So yes, I think we need to take this training to the grassroots level. When I say grassroots, clearly anybody say about 10 years of age will be able to understand this clearly. So that means you need to have this as a part of curriculum or a subject in the schools. So that's where I think we should work towards. Make this as a part of curriculum in the schools. For example, if you look at Western world, you have AEDs or automated external defibrillators you might see in every single place, including your common areas, airports, railway stations, every place. So you might have an AED to use. It's a defibrillator, automated defibrillator. So in India, clearly you are beginning to see some of these AEDs in airports and other areas, but the problem is not many of them even understand when to use it or how to use it. So the awareness is what we are lacking. So clearly the answer to this is yes. I think we should start this on the school level, say from 6th standard onwards. This should be a part of their curriculum. And also it's continuously reiterated, because all it takes is say an 1 or 2 hour class during this entire period, and you keep reiterating it over the school days. I think it has a better chance of being practiced.
Thank you. And one last question, one which we have from one of our colleagues, Mr. Ramesh. He is asking a question about the elderly. Many elders are victims of falls in bathrooms. Do you have any tips or related first aid for such victims? And can we get a list of essential first aid kits? While one portion has been answered, you did list out a few medicines as a first aid kit. Is there something beyond that which you would recommend here for the people having elderly people at home?
Okay. So broadly with the elderly people, so what is the problem which you face is typically, as you said, they could fall, right? And fall leads to either a fracture, especially in legs, because of the brittle bones, or they might even fracture their arms. So the one technique which I would recommend is know how to splint it. Splinting basically means avoiding the broken part moving too much. So the more it moves, the more pain it causes and the more bleeding it causes, and that leads to problems. So make sure the person who has fallen, whichever part is injured, try not to move that part too much, try to provide a splint. So there are various techniques of splinting. So you can either learn, so either watching many of those videos or getting yourself into a training part. So one is splinting. And clearly with elderly people, do not ignore any symptoms, especially even with a minor bleed. Please get them to the hospital, because many of the times they are on multiple medications, including blood thinners. So those blood thinners might delay arresting the bleeding. For example, even if they have a simple cut, even if you might provide compression, it may not stop for 3 minutes or even 4 minutes or even more. So those situations, clearly you need to bring them to the hospital so that we can try to stop this bleeding in a hospital setting. So elderly people with even minor cuts, continued compression, bring them to hospital. Do a splinting, don't move them too much, get adequate medical help immediately. So this is what I would suggest.
Thank you, Doctor. I now invite Ms. Kirti D'Souza to conclude the session with a word of thanks. Thank you very much for all the information. And before I complete, are any of the attendees here any questions to ask? Please do ask right away. No more questions, then I will hand over the mic to Ms. Kirti. Go ahead, Mrs. Kirti.
Thank you, Ram Prasad ji. It's actually my honor today to deliver the oath of thanks. It's been a wonderful day, and we can see the amount of dedication that all the professionals on the panel have come together to celebrate this World First Aid Day, which was actually yesterday. And we thought that we could give more opportunity for industry, institution, and the community people to actually get exposed to the knowledge of first aid. So the session was crafted to this particular audience, and the wonderful panelists with their deep experience from across the world have given us a lot of insight about examples from their own experiences. I first take opportunity to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Jitu C. Patel from Arizona, chairman of GSHP, who in spite of having a busy traveling schedule, tried to make it to this program. It's late in the night, midnight for him almost. So we also thank Dr. Ashok from Kuwait, our vice chairman, who introduced about GSHP and also announced his gladness for having this kind of a day celebrated. Our special thanks to Dr. Kamalji, our president, who actually gave the inaugural address and gave us those 10 reasons why we should know about first aid, and wonderful examples, which is very commonly known across the country, and how these famous personalities could have been saved. So if those famous personalities could not be saved, it gives us a big call that how many common people would have been there who lost their life without the first aid care being given. Our special thanks to Dr. Sarvana, consultant in emergency medicine, the expert speaker for today. It was so wonderful to listen from the doctor himself about such deep knowledge. You try to cover all kinds of emergencies that we can actually come across either in a home scenario, in a community scenario, or in a school, and or in an industry. It was so nice to see you go so deeper, and we can see a passion and commitment in the videos that you have made. And it was very elaborate, simple to understand too. And I was quite touched with some special tips that you've really given to us today, especially the care that we need to take with respect to electrical shock or with respect to the burns. And what really wondering information, at least for me, was the amputation part. I mean, like when you find a particular part amputated, you say that 6 hours is a time that it can be again joined back. That was something which really most of us would not be aware of. So definitely the knowledge that you have shared, I'm sure that is not only going to be limited to this group, but we will take a commitment to take the recorded version to reach a larger community, and the intended outcome of this program will be living even after this program. So our sincere thanks to Vice President Madhugurachi for introducing Dr. Sarvana at the beginning of the program. and Ram Prasad ji, who is Executive Chair for Insurance and Risk Management Committee. We thank you for the moderation and mastering the ceremony of today. I take this opportunity to also thank our collaborators, CAHO and Seeds of Sustainability for coming together to make this occasion happen. GSHP governance body members, GSHP members, we thank you for your presence and support, and all the participants. We hope that this program has surely delivered your expectations and much more. We will be happy to hear from you, and you can visit our website and keep in touch with us. We are reachable at www.gshp.co.in. So we will definitely be sharing the recorded version with all the participants. Extremely sorry for the intervention that happened, and thanks a lot for the CAHO team for having back of us to support in this particular program. Thanks one and all.